Hello, everyone. I'm Sukli Liu, and I'm just going to give you a brief overview of ReproRehab, what our first year has revealed, and what we're hoping to do moving forward. So for those who may not be familiar, ReproRehab has a few main goals, and these goals are premised on the fact that data science methods, which often rely on some level of computer programming skills for data intake, management, storage, and analysis, can really increase the reproducibility of research. And this has been used really widely in other fields such as neuroimaging, psychology, et cetera. But unfortunately, many rehabilitation researchers who have more clinical backgrounds or basic science backgrounds sometimes lack the fundamental training in computer programming to be able to easily adopt these practices and apply them to their own research. So therefore, we have created Reproducible Rehabilitation, or ReproRehab, which is a research education program. And our aim is to build a sustainable national workforce of rehab researchers who have basic data science skills so they can apply it to their own research over the next 5 years. Well, we just finished the first year, so over the next 4 years. A little bit about ReproRehab. We have 3 main aims in our program. The first is to train rehab researchers in basic data science skills, programming, open science, and reproducible science principles. We aim to train people with all levels of experience, so people who have never written a line of code before in their lives, all the way up to people who have written their own software but want to know more about open science or reproducible principles. And that's really our main goal. Our second goal is to train rehab researchers who already have these skills in how to teach other people these skills. And so I'll talk about how we do this in the next slide. And then our third goal is to create a searchable, rateable database of rehab-specific data sets and data science courses so that if you wanted to learn, let's say, Python or R or SQL or something like that, you could easily search this database. And importantly, you can rate it kind of like Yelp. You can give it anywhere from 1 to 5 stars. And then you could say like, I'm a researcher doing biomechanics research, and I took this course in R, and I was intending it for this purpose, but it wasn't really good for that or anything like that. So that, over time we can kind of crowdsource information or like meta information about what's out there so that hopefully rehab researchers can find the best courses and best data sets for their needs. And as I mentioned in the last slide, we just finished our first year of ReproRehab. We have an incredible educational leadership team, which is listed below. Dr. David Kennedy, Dr. James Finley, Dr. J.B. Pauline, and Dr. Keith Lowe's, and a fantastic program manager, Coralie Fenord. So I just want to kind of give you an overview of that. The format that we followed this past year is we did an 8-week online boot camp. We organized applicants into either learners, so that would be people who are trying to learn something new, perhaps obviously, and then TAs. And so we focused on a really hands-on experience. So we had 8 TAs and 25 learners. Each TA was paired with just a few learners, like anywhere from 2 to 4 learners, into small pods. And really the pods met on a weekly basis during the weekly boot camp to learn specific skills that were relevant to their own research that they really needed. During this time, our goal was for learners to gain basic skills in programming and data science, and for TAs to get weekly experience or training in working with teaching people these skills. After the 8-week boot camp, we gave everyone a 4-month self-guided learning period. So our thought was that learners should at this point be able to take what they've learned and be able to learn from online existing resources at that point. And then our goal for the learners was be able to do self-guided coursework that they select from ReproRehab DB or that they find in other ways, and then start to apply what they're learning to their own research, because that's really where the rubber hits the road. And so that's what they did. They did projects where they applied what they learned to their research. And then during the 4-month self-guided period, we also had TAs who adapted the materials that we provided or created, most of the times, honestly, they created their own materials, and they hosted their own boot camps or created their own video tutorials for topics of interest for the rehab community as well. Overall, the long-term results that we are hoping to achieve is for learners to gain proficiency and be able to start to integrate more rigorous data science methods into their research, and eventually, hopefully, also become TAs. And then for TAs to gain expertise in creating and hosting their own training programs so that they can go forward and train many other people to be trainers as well. And that is kind of a way to exponentially increase our data science capacity in the rehab field. This is called the train the trainer model, or as I like to call it, a benevolent use of a Ponzi scheme. And then finally, our third aim, like I mentioned, was to create this rehab specific data site or website so that people could search for resources. And we have actually done that. It's called ReproRehab DB, and we have a link to it at the end, and we encourage you to check it out. I also wanted to create this video just to talk briefly about the needs assessment that we did. So when we first got the grant in March, the first thing that we did was set up a needs assessment that we issued through May and June of last year. We had 68 responses. People came from all types of backgrounds, all career levels, all institutes around the US and abroad, and provided really awesome feedback about what they want when it comes to reproducible research and data science. So the biggest things that they said they wanted were a sense of community, collaboration, and sharing. And I put a picture of Corley here because she's the one that really mined this data. She went through both the open, like free text responses and the multiple choice questions that we had and came up with these conclusions. So the main things that they really highlighted, which were actually a little bit surprising to us, is the really huge interest in forming a community around this. So I think a lot of people in the rehabilitation research field want to know that other people are also dedicated to reproducible research and to data science and to programming, and they want to know other people that are doing this as well. People also want to have more opportunities for collaboration across these areas and for sharing both their experiences and their data and their resources. And then the other things were more in line with what we were expecting, but they really want individualized or targeted training. So people have mentioned that informal training with colleagues worked previously because it was directly applicable to their own work. So that's like, a senior lab mate giving you code for something that you're trying to do, and then you learn to tailor it. They also, however, like for more formal coursework that they've taken, because there's a financial incentive, they've already invested money into it, there's a sense of accountability, and there's structure. So those are things minus the financial incentive. We did try to build in accountability and structure, and then also kind of make it tailored to what people wanted to learn. The biggest topics of interest were data visualization, using big data, learning how to use R, MATLAB, or Python, and in many cases, people wanted to switch from one language to the other, statistics and machine learning. And then the people are really interested in data sharing and large data sets, as well as in support to be able to do this. And finally, there was a large desire to teach or mentor, apply new skills to their research, and to learn how to handle data sets. So based on these results, and especially because there was a consistent desire for community, when we launched ReproRehab last year with our first cohort, we really focused on trying to build community. So we did that online through our Slack channel, regular Zoom meetings, forming the pods, which really started to form a sense of pod identity. And then also in-person meetups at conferences like Society for Neuroscience and the American Society for Neurorehabilitation. We also tried to provide a lot of open access resources on our YouTube channel, GitHub, and our database, ReproRehab so that people, even if they're not part of each fellow class each year, they can still access the same materials and kind of be part of the community virtually. And then we also tried to provide leadership and training opportunities for fellows to teach their local communities and to develop kind of this interest amongst their local environments. Just briefly, this past year, we've just wrapped up our 2022 to 2023 ReproRehab cohort. We had an amazing class of fellows. There were 25 learners, almost evenly distributed across graduate students, postdocs, and faculty, all the way up to full professors, which we just want to highlight and emphasize so that you know that you can apply for this program at any stage of your career. We surprisingly thought that we were mostly going to get people who had really had a lot of experience, or sorry, we thought we were gonna get people who had never written a line of code before, that we would just provide hands-on kind of mentorship in this is how you open Python, this is how you write your first lines of code, etc. But it ended up being a pretty mixed bag, from people who have never written a line of code before up to people who wrote full software packages. So this is what we call advanced learners. And for them, they really had mastered programming, but they wanted more experience and more insight when it came to open science, how to share their data, how to do reproducible science and things like that. So that was also really exciting to see. And then everybody had an emphasis on medical rehabilitation research and project goals when they joined. We also recruited 8 TAs. They came from all different backgrounds as well. They were anywhere from graduate students to industry professionals. And they were selected for having the most widely matching criteria with the learner needs. Because as I mentioned, we set people up into pods. So we interviewed every single person and then matched them based on their interest, their skill level, and what they needed and what they wanted to learn. And the pods were great because they kind of formed their own identity. And that was really fun to see. So moving forward, what we hope to do in the May cycle, or in the 2023 to 2024 cycle, we are going to move applications up earlier so that people will know sooner if they are part of this fellowship class. So the cycle will actually open in May, so look out for that. And then because of the great feedback that we've received, especially about people wanting to have a little bit more opportunity for in-person interactions, this cycle we will have an in-person kickoff. And all former ReproRehab fellows are also welcome to attend. And this will be at the end of September. And then it'll be followed by just a 5-week online boot camp where it's really pod specific and pod focused. Because 3 of the weeks that are online now, 3 of the weeks that are part of the 8-week online program are now going to be moved to the in-person kickoff. That said, if you can't make it in person for any reason, we are also open to the idea of having some pods that are completely virtual, and they will kind of get some of the content. They'll get all the content virtually if you can't make the in-person kickoff. Essentially, we want people to have the opportunity to meet in person, but we also don't want for anyone to be excluded or not be able to participate because they can't come in person. So we're trying to accommodate as many people as we can. And then similar to last year, we'll have a 4-month self-guided period, during which time we'll still do kind of some fun networking activities like hacky hours, which are like happy hours, but nerdier, office hours with the leadership team, and regular check-ins with the pods. And our hope is that these will culminate in presentations at a meeting or hackathon that will be just prior to the American Society for NeuroRehab meeting in April 2024. So this is our plan. Hopefully it accommodates a little bit more of the feedback that we heard from our last fellowship class. And as we mentioned, once you're a ReproRehab fellow, you're always a ReproRehab fellow. So hopefully we can continue to build the community, and we would love to hear from you. If you have any questions, feel free to check out our website. This is where applications will be posted once they open. You can also check out ReproRehab DB, which I mentioned earlier. And then we are active on Twitter, YouTube, and GitHub at ReproRehab. And then you can also send us an email at reprorehab.com, at reprorehab@gmail.com. And we encourage you to sign up for our newsletter on our website as well, because that's how you can also keep in touch with the latest things that are going on. So with that, I will stop, and thank you so much for your time and attention.